Well, this subscriber says, will you make a video showing the difference between a lift out Notan and a direct Notan? I've done both lift out Notan and direct Notan in various quick tips, but I've never done the two together. Let's give that a try. Well, if Notan's a new concept for you, simply means a pattern, that's all. A pattern that shows where the shadows are and where the lights are, because shadows and lights are really absolutely necessary for realistic painting or painting where we're using images. So, it's Notan, not Notan. It's spelled Notan. So what we do when we're using the Notan in painting is that we simply put one value everywhere where we see any kind of shadow, no matter how dark or light the shadow is. Because the Notan's not a value study. It's simply a diagram. That's all. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that we can use to guide us when we're painting, and painting those areas where we see shadow and areas where we see light, or what I'd like to say, areas that are not in shadow. So I'm going to do just a little bit here with both methods and show you, there are many approaches, methods where you end up with the same thing. So we'll go just with the direct method first, and I'll just take a portion. I've got two little rectangles just sort of loosely indicated here. And I'll just do a portion here so we don't make this too long, because it'd just be the same thing over and over again. But so for example, if we take a single apple, we could take either one of these. Maybe we should just take this one because it's got more shadow over there. Now, if you look at that and you're looking for shadow, well, you have very little area, very few areas that are not in shadow. We have this guy has some what we call backlight, or maybe light coming, maybe there are cast shadows being cast by the leaves on the tree. We see some very light coming through there. And then we see some light here and here and here. Actually, this is more reflected light. But when I squint and look at it in values, yeah, I do see it in that lighter value range. So we might also include that in the Notan. So if we'll start out just with that. And now, when you're doing a direct Notan, what materials can you use? I don't advise using pencil, because pencil is hard to keep at the same value, and also tends to smear unless you use fixative or something on it. But a Tombow pen or some kind of brush pen like this, where you have the ability to use it as a brush and as a pen, like we do this one. This is Tombow, and these are usually available in most art supply stores and on Amazon. Not that I'm trying to give Amazon more trade, but this is very good, dependable little instrument for using to do Notan. You can use a wash for doing the direct Notan, and I'll show you more about that when I get to the lift out Notan to show you that part of it. So the important thing is that you put something down here that you can paint on top of. Now, if you're doing acrylic, you probably want to just use direct Notan most of the time, because in indirect or in the lift out Notan, we'll be putting a wash on and lifting out. Well, unless you have a retardant that keeps your acrylic from drying, you would have found that difficulty for the lift out part. So I would say that maybe if you're using acrylic, you might find it less frustrating to use the direct Notan. Watercolor. Well, yours is going to be just a little bit different. Now the Notan for watercolor really works best when you work on damp paper, because on damp paper you're not likely to leave harsh lines or harsh edges. So all the kind of materials you're working will determine. So you find the best way for doing the Notan according to your material. So sometimes I'll start out with a preliminary drawing. Sometimes I'll just combine the drawing and the Notan. So I'll show you both of those too. So let's say if I were going, suppose there really is more light pattern over here than there is with that one. So I really do need to make a decision. Let's just say I'll stick with this one. All right. So first of all, what I'll do is just preliminary drawing. I'm not trying to make a composition here or set something that would appear as a composition. I'm just showing you a technique, a method. And so I would then create a preliminary drawing of the shape, and that means that really all you need are the edges of the shape. You don't need anything more than that. And so this is something like that. All right. And let's see do I need anything else indicated there. All right, just that would probably, if I wanted to include this apple in it too, well, I'll just go ahead and do that. So that would start about right there, and then in this, it would go off the edge, and then would start about right here, and it's tilted up. So I'm just gonna go. All right, let's just say that much. Now that's all I'll do. Then I'll go to the Notan part. Now, what I like to do if I'm using these pens is I'll use a darker pen for the preliminary drawing and one that's lighter in value for the Notan itself. Now, these have numbers, the little tombos do. By the way, they are water soluble, but the numbers might not make sense to you because the higher the number, the lighter the value in the pen. So the N65 is the one I usually will use for the preliminary drawing. And the N55, or 45, N45, much lighter, is a better one now for using, did I get that backwards? N45 for the darker one, N65 for the lighter one, for the lighter value. So we got that. So I'll go to the lighter one now, and I'm looking for shadow, only shadow. So I can start, I don't have to do the whole thing together. I can start simply with the shadow on this apple, and the shadow is on this apple too. In fact, the amount of that apple I'm including is all in shadow. So this is direct, where I'm just using the pen portion to show a shadow pattern, that's all. And I'll try to keep that as close to one value as I can, so that all I have there is a pattern. Now also, this is form shadow that's on this apple, but then we have negative space, or the surroundings, also in shadow. So I just bring that shadow right on down and treat it as a single subject of shadow. Make shadow the subject that we are doing, and we're not doing the apple, and we're not doing the leaves and foliage and all that. All we're drawing shadow. So now, just to show you that there is the same indication, I would go directly up here to pick up that shadow, that form shadow. It's some combination of cast shadow and form shadow. This shadow is cast by some other leaves. It doesn't matter here, it's shadow. Shadow is shadow, no matter if it's form or cast. And so I see a little bit of light coming down the edge. So I'll just create the little edge light there. And then I see a little bit of a pattern of, let's see, what does that do there? That little light comes down the edge. Oh, that goes around there. All right, here's something that you can do. If you have your shadow accidentally move into an area of light, you can use a quick tip in water and just lift it out like this. Oh, that you can do if you're painting in oil. If you're painting in acrylic, you work fast enough, you can do that. In watercolor, you simply just blot it out. But it's a little bit trickier, but you'll learn how. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start there again, and I'm going to come around like this and create just that shape of shadow like that. Like that. You see it's a little bit lighter there where it's still damp. create that little shape of shadow. Then I'll go up like this and create that little shape of shadow around there. And then I'll just continue like this and have that little shape of shadow. It's sort of coming down in there like that and around. Now, if I miss, and I did miss that, but I'll show you what we'll do about that later. Or if there's an area that's just too tiny to indicate the shadow with the pen, what you can do there is you can lift that out later, so you don't worry too much about that. And I'm going to turn the pen around in my hand so I have a little bit more control over the drawing of it. And here, there's just a very little thin shadow coming down there like that, and it spreads out like that, and very little, as it comes down there, kind of a little fan-shaped shadow, a little bit of shadow moving up in there. Okay, I made that light a little too small, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'll show you why in just a minute. So it's just like any kind of drawing, except now we're drawing shadow. And almost, now this is really not light. That is a reflected light. So that is part of the whole shadow. We have a little bit of light right up there casting on that. And then what do we have down here? A little bit of light down here and down here. And I'm going to lift those out. I'm just going to keep going now. Now, all this is in shadow. Now, if I put that leaf in there, I'll lift that out later. That's just for doing the easiest way. Let's throw all this in shadow. And as it comes up, we pretend that apple's not there, that we throw all that in shadow, 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 shadow. I'm just going to go ahead now and do that. And we'll do just a little bit of lift out here, as we will call it editing. So I would just do that so that we would see that shadow shape down here. Okay, I don't have my apple leaning as close to that, to the edge as that is. And so now we did have that one little shape, a little bit of light poking up right there. I think that's too much in the corner. So maybe I'll just create some light there. And then to edit, I'll go back with a quick tip, dampened quick tip, and I'll just look now and get my lights refined. And this part, all I'm doing is lifting the light shape out with the quick tip right here. And then I'd go up here and lift this one out a little bit more right there, like that. And see, this comes down a little bit like that, and it comes down a little bit like that. So that's all I'm doing there is drawing light. I need to put a little bit more shadow back in right like that. Now, that's kind of rough, but it does the job, I think. All right, now, do I need to lift out anything? Oh, I don't see that. Okay. Yep. A little bit of light right here, but not so much as I've put in there. So all this is in shadow and shadow and shadow. And then I have a little bit of that light coming through at the corner down there. And then I close off any areas that seem still to be light. And what do I do with that now? The next thing would be to go to my block end, and there's where I begin to show the differences in the values of the shadows and the values of the lights. So that is the direct method, where you just put the value of whatever you're using, pen or whatever. You just put a single, or keeping it as close as possible. You're going to get some little variation. You always do. But the idea is not to try to make values that you see. Just understand that what you're doing is drawing the pattern of light and shadow. Now, coming down to what would be a true lift out. Again, there are several ways we can do that. One would be going back to the pen here. If you're working very small, it's easy enough to do. If you come back to the pen here, you might just make a whole area there dark. But that's time consuming. So my favorite way to do lift out Notan is to use a wash. Now, it's important that you use a transparent color, a dark transparent color for your wash. If you want to use what you would normally use to tone your canvas for your wash, that's fine. I usually just use ultramarine blue because it doesn't bleed through like some of the colors. You wouldn't want to use a highly staining color like the phthalos. They're too staining. So any color that's going to stain, that's overpowering, you probably want to stay away from. But for me, when I do there, I put, this is oil, I put a little bit of Gamsol, a little bit of Gamsol into this little cup. And then I put, with the palette knife, I'll put just a little bit of paint out of the tube of ultramarine blue. Then with an old ragged round brush, I stir it, just like this. It dissolves much easier if you use a brush than it does if you try to use a spatula or something like that. And when then I'll stir it, and then I'll test it. And I keep little sheets of canvas, little scrap sheets of canvas around to do these tests with. And I don't see one right now, so I'll just show you. On the scrap, I'll test it right here. Then what I'm doing is I'm testing it to see, is that a good value to use? And I think it is. I like to keep those close to that middle value range. So usually when we're working on canvas, we're working flat or at some angle. And so one disadvantage of this, or it's not really a disadvantage, some keep an eye on, is that the wash is going to run if you put it on too wet. So I'm going to go ahead and put this wash on, and in this case, well, I'll just use a relatively soft brush, not too soft, and just use vertical strokes. And I just want those to stay pretty much the same value. And pull it across to kind of even that out just a little bit there. All right. Now that's okay. So that is that's where I'll start doing the lift out. Now to do the lift out, you can use either paper towel that doesn't, or Kleenex that doesn't have any pattern in it, or you can use a flat brush. And I think using the flat brush in this case would be a better way to go. I'll get one that's a little bit small. A flat brush that's stiff, and this is a rosemary ivory. It's really, really good for getting precision. So now this is a pattern. I don't have to have the drawing here. Some people will have to have the drawing, but what I'll do here is I'll just come in and start lifting out light where I see light. So that is that light. I'm making this one a little bit closer over than I did that one. So I place that one in the center here, and I'm placing this one as if I would be doing the whole composition. And so then I'll come around shaping, I'm drawing light. Now if you think, this time you're thinking backwards. If you think I'm drawing light, that's all I'm drawing. I'm just drawing light. I'm not drawing apple. I'm not drawing anything, leaf, apple, all that kind of stuff. No, I'm just drawing light. In this case, sometimes the light will be very specific in shape, and sometimes it won't. So I made that just a little bit too, all right, that's good right there. And let's just see light right there. And then we'll have light right here. Nope, that's too far. Now here's what happens. If you don't get it, you can just put a little bit of wash back over it. It will even out enough. And I'll come about right in here. And let's pull that light out right there, and then pull out the light right there. And then we'll have that little bit of light. Let's see, there's apple shape goes right here. So that's a little bit of light right there coming out, sort of like that. So if I want to put that leaf in, I can see just a good bit of the light there. I might not want it that close. Maybe I could just do this, just pull out what I see, the shape of light on that leaf as it comes down. And I think I'll just take that right off the page. Now, if you will have a paper towel or Kleenex in your hand and constantly wipe off the brush as you're lifting out, that helps. Now, if you need to edit for the lift out, if you need to edit, then you go back and reload the brush and try to get just the amount of wash in the brush as you had to begin with. And so here, what I'd like to do is I give this a little bit more of a shape right here. Let's get that. There we go. That's probably good enough like that. And so now, how am I doing here on that? And will that work there? So that will cause the apple to come up like that and turn like this. Okay. Now, what I will sometimes do is after I have lifted out the light, then put some a little bit of preliminary drawing on top of that. I have to let that dry to do that. But I would come in and just indicate the edges of the apple just enough to show where I'm placing it. Sometimes I'll do that, or sometimes I'll just squint and just go and begin directly to paint those degrees of value in there. But the advantage here of Notan itself is that you have a pattern now for your light and shadow, for every place that's in shadow, every place that's in light. And the reason that is so nice and helpful is that when you start painting, everything where you've got a value, a darker value, every place there is going to go in as a shadow value, which on the traditional value scale is right in the neighborhood of 5. A traditional scale that goes between 1 and 10 or 10 and 1. Right in that range of value 5, everything that you see in dark will go at least that, will not be any lighter than that, pretty much. That's the way it works. And then everywhere where you have pulled out your pattern of light, then none of that will be any darker than value 5 or 4, are those lighter values that start with that middle value and then get lighter and lighter and lighter. All those will be worked out in the areas that you have lifted out. And same here, all those will be worked out in the areas that you have left white. So there's the comparison with the technique. Let me just warn watercolor people. When you do this, dampen your paper first, then put the wash on very light and use a piece of paper towel or Kleenex that doesn't have a pattern on it. And if you use Kleenex, don't use something with cream in it. Just those cheaper, I should say, tissue. It doesn't matter. That generic Kleenex has become the word that we use. Anyway, you can, with watercolor, if you let that, put that wash on and give it just a few minutes to just begin to lose its gloss, then you could just blot all that out. And you can also use a thirsty brush. Watercolor painters know what I mean by thirsty brush. What I mean is it's a brush that has been wet, but all the water has been pulled out of it, and it works very well for lifting out. You lift out with a thirsty brush the same way I lifted out there. If you're a pastel painter, I think that you would do well to do your block in or your Notan in watercolor. That always works very well in pastel watercolor or gouache. Maybe gouache would be the thing to use. But you wouldn't use acrylic because then it wouldn't go on your acrylic, your pastel would go on top of acrylic very much. But anyway, that's a comparison now of lift out and direct Notan. And this is another one you learn by practice. So give that a try and see which one you like best. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.